Good afternoon, Committee on Finance will convene for our hearing to deal with the executive budget. This is House Bill 200. Thank you for the members and all their hard work in reviewing the various department requests and the executive budget. So we will go through the testimony. First up, it is DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thanks very much for the opportunity. We will stand on our testimony in support. Thank you.
Next up is Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. Not present. Thank you very much. We have Budget and Finance.
Hirai is here.
Okay. Ms. Director Hirai, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We submitted our written testimony, and if you would like, I can go over some of the what we think are some of the more important provisions of the American Rescue Plan Act with respect to what you're doing with respect to the budget. It'll be brief if you would like me to do that. Otherwise, I'll just stand on our testimony.
I think your written testimony was very thorough and sufficient.
Okay.
Thank you. Executive Office of Early Learning.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. We all stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
DLIR.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on our written testimony and are here for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is OIP.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. I'll stand on my written testimony, although I'd like to emphasize that when we lost 3 employees earlier this year, our backlog went from being the lowest in 10 years to increasing 40% in 6 months. And that's just a preview of things to come if we lose any positions. So I hope that you will consider our testimony very carefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not sure if public safety, they didn't sign up for Zoom, but if they are present, we can take your testimony. No, they're not here. Okay. Next up is DHERD.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair Raikawada from the Department of Human Resources Development. We'll stand on our written testimony and support, and we'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Department of Transportation.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Cullen, and members of the Finance Committee. Jade Butai for DOT. We stand on our testimony in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you too.
Thank you.
Next up is the State Librarian.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair. We will stand on our written testimony in support and happy to answer any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. Hawaii Public Housing Authority.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Crime Victim Compensation Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Crime Victim Compensation Commission stands on our written testimony. And I'd just like to add, if we don't receive this infusion of funding, our organization will not be able to continue, and also we'll lose the federal matching funds that the commission receives. Thank you very much. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon. We'll stand on our written testimony.
Thank you very much. Department of Hawaiian Homelands.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Luke. We stand on our testimony and thank you for your support.
Thank you very much. MedQuest of DHS.
Oh, aloha. I just signed up to be available for questions. The director will respond on behalf of the Department of Human Services.
Thank you very much. Next up is DAG's Comptroller.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Cullen, and members of the committee, Colonel Taguro, Comptroller. Department of Accounting and General Services stands on its written testimony. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the legislature on this very important biennium budget. We're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DOE.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Cullen, members of the committee, Brian Hallett, DOE CFO, on behalf of Superintendent Kishimoto. We stand on our testimony and support and thank you for your support of public schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Department of Agriculture.
Aloha Chair, members of the committee, Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser for Department of Agriculture. We stand on our written testimony and support and thank you for, we're available for to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Present. Thank you. Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair. Vice Chair Cullen, Danny Wong-Tomiyasu from Department of Health. We stand on our testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DHS.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Kathy Betts, Director for the Department of Human Services. We stand on our written testimony and support, and thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Next is Department of Defense.
Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Cullen, and members of the committee. I'm Colonel Steve Logan, the Deputy Adjutant General for the State Department of Defense. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony in support of House Bill 200. We stand on our written testimony and are available to answer any questions the committee may have. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next up is DLNR.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Suzanne Case on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. We stand on our written testimony in support and thank you for all your hard work. Aloha.
Thank you very much. We also have Laureen Bates, HMS of DVR.
Oh, good afternoon, Chair. This is, I'm just standing on the testimony of the Department of DHS and available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Office of Enterprise Technology Services.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Todd of ETS. On behalf of Doug Murdoch, we respectfully stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women. Not present. Thank you very much. Next up is University of Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Chair. Members Calbert Young for the University of Hawaii. We've submitted testimony and can stand on that testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Alzheimer's Association. Okay, Mr. Ross.
I requested Mr. Ross.
Okay. Okay. Alzheimer's Association with comments. We'll move on. Aaron Arakaki.
Aaron Arakaki with the Executive Office on Aging. We stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers who sign up for Zoom. So with that, any questions? Any questions, members? If not, we will recess for decision making. Thank you. Committee on Finance will reconvene for decision-making on House Bill 200, which is the executive budget. First off, I wanted to thank all the members for their due diligence and working hard to analyze the budget. This year has been really challenging. As you know, COVID-19 has not only disrupted the health and safety of our residents, the economic impact has been very challenging and devastating. And as a result, in the beginning of session, we were faced with around $1.8 billion of budget deficit. With the help of the federal government and the $1.6 billion relief funds and other assistance, and also the Council on Revenue's adjustment, we are pleased with the assistance of all the committee members to deliver a balanced budget today. Let me just go through some of the highlights contained in this budget. But before we start, before I go through the highlights, let me just thank my staff. I know it was really challenging this year and they did a really terrific job in analyzing the budget. So heartfelt thanks go to the finance staff. Also thank the departments. I know in the beginning of session and while they're going through this budget, many of the departments and agencies, especially Department of Health, had the challenging task to come up with substantial cuts. And I know in discussing some of these cuts with the departments, you could tell that it was a very, very painful experience. So we appreciate all the work of the departments and them working very closely with our committee to come up with the budget today. So what we're passing today is a reflection of the recognition of many needs in the community and the hard work of the departments and the cooperation with the administration. So it's my pleasure to present you the committee's work on this budget. So let me just go through some of the highlights for Department of Agriculture. We are allocating $87,000 to transition the milk control program to general funds. As you know, milk control program, decades ago, we had many dairies. Right now, we have one. So this has not been a sustainable approach. So we are planning to general fund this program and consolidate into the commodities branch. This budget also allocates $100,000 for purchase of services for floriculture and ornamental industries because this has been one of the priorities of the legislature. This also provides $622,000 to transition the agriculture loan division to general funds, $718,000 to transition position funded within the agriculture development and food security special fund to general funds, $2.13 million to transition the planned quarantine branch to general funds. And also this budget also restores some of the fundings for the Queen Bee program by allocating $25,000. For Department of Accounting and General Services, we understand that Bishop Museum has been substantially has been hit with budget issues as well because they have not been getting revenues from ticket sales. This budget fully funds the subsidy that goes to Bishop Museum in the amount of $626,000. And Bishop Museum, instead of being in budget and finance, will now be under DAGS, under the commission. It's the State Foundation on the Culture and the Arts. This also provides $287,000 for reapportionment commission and $548,000 or so to restore funding for 10 critical accounting division positions. Under Department of Attorney General's office, this is something that was very important for many of the members. And so this will fully fund the sex assault treatment purchase of services. There was a 714,000 cut, so this will restore it to $2.38 million. In addition to that, this also provides $870,000 for the establishment of the complex litigation fraud and compliance unit. Under budget and finance, this also provides 130,000 or so amount to an investment officer for ERS and also $116,000 for an investment specialist for EUTF. Under DBID, because Hawaii Tourism Authority has been severely impacted due to loss of TAT, this provides $71 million of the American Rescue plans to fund the operating expenses for HTA. In addition to that, 187,000 or so to restore the executive director and executive secretary for HTDC, which has been cut from the cut due to budget constraints. This also transfers $550,000 for the support of Pisces, and it will be removed out of DBID Aerospace and will be transferred to UH Hilo. This budget also consolidates Land Use Commission, Land Survey Division, OEQC with Office of Planning to create the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to encourage sustainable development and efficiency and some of these land development issues. For DCCA, $122,000 for staff attorney to address increased consumer fraud cases due to COVID-19. $700,000 for the first year and around $1 million for the second year for the repairs to the King Kalakaua building. $3.5 million for the first year and $500,000 for the second year for upgrades to critical business registration system. For Department of Defense, $130,000 or so, and 3 general labor positions for the veteran cemetery. And restoration for the Hilo Youth Challenge Academy in the amount of $612,000 or so in general funds and $2.3 million in federal funds. For Department of Education, this will restore the early college program. So this will be adding $1.5 million for the full amount of $2.59 million for the early college program. And in order to continue the Hawaii Keiki program, this budget also provides $2.48 million for Hawaii Keiki. This budget also includes use of American Rescue Plan funds to restore some of the education cuts in the amount of $88 million in the first year, or in general funds, and $11 million in American Rescue funds for restoration for EDN 100, which is the need for classrooms. I mean, funding for actual schools and classroom funding. We also provide $32 million in general funds and $315,000 in American Rescue funds to restore special ed funding. So for EDN 100 and EDN 150, this budget fully restores any cuts. For Department of Human Resource Development, $307,000 of American Rescue funds in first year and $635,000 in the second year for additional workers' compensation claims. And also $275,000 in rescue funds will be used for additional unemployment insurance payments. For Department of Human Services, $388,000 will be used to restore 16 critical MedQuest positions. And $500,000 of American Rescue funds will be used to provide continued rent supplement program. In addition, $2.14 million will be used to restore plan reduction for Medicaid programs. These are essential programs, especially in this time. This is currently general assistance has gone from around $350 to $250. In order to keep general assistance at $350, we are committing $5.4 million in American Rescue funds in fiscal year 22 to continue that level of funding. For homeless services, we are using American Rescue funds to provide $10 million for the first year and $14.3 million in second year. For Department of Health, we will be using $681,000 for prenatal support services. And for family planning services, we will be fully restoring and providing additional support in the amount of $1.7 million for family planning services. One of the items cut in the budget has been the HIV prevention and care services. This budget fully restores the HIV prevention and care services in the amount of $3.1 million. Also, other items that have been cut in this initial executive budget was the tuberculosis branch, which would have laid off doctors and other professional staff. So this budget also fully restores the tuberculosis branch in the amount of $3.3 million in general funds and $1.25 million in federal funds. For Department of Labor, this budget provides $3.11 million for Disability Compensation Division modernization. And this is because the state has borrowed funds for the unemployment benefits payout. We will be using $2.8 million from the American Rescue Plan to pay the interest in the first year and a commitment to pay the interest and the loan payment for the second year in the amount of $740 million. For Department of Land and Natural Resources, this provides $500,000 for soil and water conservation. This was in the base, and the executive budget reduced this program by $100,000. So this will be fully restoring the $500,000 for soil and water conservation district. Next, this was not in the budget, but the legislature continued to support the battle against rapid OHIA death. And because of that, we'll be using $875,000 for continued funding for rapid OHIA death surveys and control. This was also not in the budget, but we do believe the importance of sea urchin hatchery to help in some of the coral and development and other issues, and for marine life conservation and restoration. So this budget provides $1 million in American Rescue funds for the sea urchin hatchery. In addition to that, $2 million of additional boating special funds for harbor facility repair and maintenance, and $1.4 million for 30 new conservation and resource enforcement and officers statewide. For Department of Public Safety, $500,000 for re-entry contract services. And one of the items cut in public safety was the Hep C treatment, which would have resulted in just a small number of inmates getting treatment for Hep C. So we are fully restoring the $1.37 million for Hep C treatment. For the University of Hawaii, this budget also includes $62 million to restore funding that was reduced to University of Hawaii budget. And we will be using $1 million of the American Rescue Plan to offset lost revenues at the Waikiki Aquarium. Lastly, we will be using the American Rescue Funds to continue the Hawaii Promise Program. What has been surprising is during this time, the number of applicants under Hawaii Promise Program has significantly expanded, and we don't want access to learning be impeded because of lack of funds. So because of that, we are putting in additional amount for the Hawaii Promise Program in the amount of $1.8 million in general funds and $1.3 million in American Rescue plans. And that is all of the highlights in the operating. Let me just take a moment to thank Representative Yamashita, who worked diligently on the CIP budget. And it has been really a challenge this year to balance the needs of many of the repair and maintenance projects statewide and to take care of the needs in the community. So let me turn it over to Rep. Yamashita to go over some of the highlights.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to thank you and Vice Chair again for this opportunity to work on this budget with you. It was, like you said, a challenge. And I'd also like to thank the members for their input as we went through this process. As well as your staff, Albert and Nan, and especially Riley Fujisaki, who was critical in putting together this budget and doing a lot of the research and putting together all the numbers that and information we needed to make a good decision. And then from my office, also Kathy Seal from working with the members. She does a lot of work with when the members have requests or have identified needs. She works on what's possible and works with the members and their staffs. So I'd like to thank her for all her hard work there. The budget in general, general obligation bonds total 1.2279 billion over the biennium. And then also there is the American Rescue Plan funds that we have identified so far, $115.32 million that we can use for that purpose, for CIP purposes. And then all means of financing, it's about $2.54 billion. Some of the highlights I'd like to bring up is for the Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, 1.2 million for improvements for the airport quarantine facility, 3.2 million for the Lower Hamakua ditch system, and $750,000 for the Kamungala vacuum cooling plant. In the Department of Accounting and General Services, we have put $9.7 million in there for broadband infrastructure for the Department of Education so that we can leverage some of their expertise to help the department work on those issues, as well as $4.7 million for improvements, modernization, and expansion of critical communication systems. And for the Department of TBED, there's about $123 million for the expansion of affordable housing, which is, we all know is very, very important. So that includes DERF as well as the revolving fund, the rental housing revolving fund. Within that, there is $40 million for the School Street project. And I think that's one for senior housing that members have identified of great importance, as well as Department of Defense, $5 million for additional disaster warning communication devices statewide, $6 million for retrofitting buildings for hurricane protective measures. And for the Department of Education, one of the ones that I want to identify is $35.7 billion that we've used the American Rescue Plan funds And it's 35.7 for heat abatement and ventilation to address needs that may be COVID related. And we think that's important. About $184 million for deferred maintenance. And public libraries, there's about $5.8 million. Department of Human Services for HPHA, for HPHA, we put $10 million for renovation and improvements. Department of Hawaiian Homelands, it totals about $43.5 million that we put in for their needs to help their beneficiaries. In the Department of Health, $20 million for the renovation of the intensive care unit in Hilo. That's part of the American Recovery Act money. And, I think we also put in money, there's about $35 million total. Of that, what 20 million went to Hilo, but for HHSC. We did fund the purchase of legacy lands, 9.3 million in all means of financing for Nava Eha. Of that, $2 million was from the state. 1.7 is going to be required by the county, and the rest is going to be federal funds. Let's see. Department of Department of Public Safety, there's about $30 million. Department of Transportation, $114.6 million for airfield improvements, $115 million for the Hui Airport, $92.5 million for the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport, $15.7 million for the Ellison Onizuka Kono International Airport at Keohole. And then harbor improvements is about $211 million for modernizing our state harbors statewide, and about $145 million for replacement of bridges, which we know is of great need, as well as $13 million for rock mitigation and projects throughout the state. And we know that's, there's going to be, Chair, some issues with some of the landslides that we have to deal with later. So we got to probably revisit this again. And then with the, also at the University of Hawaii, we put $1.1 million for the removal of the Ho'okukea telescope in Mauna Kea. This is to help remove it as well as mediate any kind of disruption we did to that area. There's $60 million for master planning for Manoa. Community colleges, Honolulu Community College, $15 million for their new technology renovation. They're going to be renovating different rooms. I know that they wanted to do a new science building, but they're reprioritizing there, so that's a good thing. And those are most of the highlights, Chair, as well as I think we stuck in $16 million for judiciary in this budget because we weren't able to do it in the other budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Yamashita. The CIP listing will be emailed to Director Hirai, and he can provide copies to the departments. The full listing will be available after the House votes, just in case the House rejects the hard work that this committee did. And the worksheets will be posted once it is cleaned up and after the entire House votes. Okay, just kind of as a macro, when the governor first submitted this budget, the first year, the total amount for general funds, the administration reduced the budget by $340 million, around $340 million in the first year in general funds, and in the second year, $228 million in general funds. All means of financing is in the first year, $255 million reduction from last year's budget, and $150 million reduction from the last year's budget. What this budget includes is compared to the governor's reduction of 340 million, it reduces the budget by $487 million. So it's a reduction of even around $140 million more than what the governor's reduction is. But that's in general funds. That's because we were able to supplant a lot of these through the American Relief Act. And in the second year, compared to the governor who reduced last year's budget to about $228 million, the House is reducing it by $393 million. But again, some of it has been supplanted with the American Relief Fund. So with that, any discussion? Representative Kobayashi.
In addition, there are dozens of other add-ons not mentioned.
Right. So this doesn't, some of the highlights that we mentioned is not, it's not exhaustive. You know, there are other things that have been added or deleted. Let me just talk about some of the deletions because I think that warrants some discussion. We have deleted across some of the agencies, some of the other current expenses, depending on whether the committee felt they were warranted at this time or not. And we also did an aggressive reduction in vacancy cuts. And we will continue to work with the departments on restoration of some of the vacancy cuts, but that will be the first step as we go through this legislative process. Any other discussion? If not, thank you very much. So recommendation is to pass as a HD1. Please take the vote.
Members voting on House Bill 200, recommendation of the chair is to pass with amendments, noting all members present, any members voting reservations. Reservations by Representative McDermott. Any members voting no? All members vote aye, chair recommendation adopted.
Thank you very much. Hearing is adjourned.